I acknowledge and pay my respects to the Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians and original storytellers of the land on which Beyond a Thought is made. I would like to pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. I also pay my respects to the matriarchs who have and continue to bear the brunt of colonisation. Sovereignty was never ceded, so this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Hey guys, welcome to Beyond a Thought. After editing my last video called In the Arena, I realised there's a really great video I could dig a lot deeper into. The story is about an AFL player from the Sydney Swans called Adam Goodes, and his final years playing Aussie rules before his retirement. This video is also inspired by the documentary The Australian Dream that came out last year. To give you some kind of context of what kind of player this man was, he started playing AFL professionally in 1999 when he signed on by the Sydney Swans at just the age of 19, and went on playing for the same team until his retirement in 2015. Over a career spanning 18 years, Goodes played a club record 372 games, kicked 464 goals, claimed 2 Brownlow medals, won 2 premierships, collected 3 Bob Skillett medals, was named in the Indigenous Team of the Century, and was the 2014 Australian of the Year. A lot of you who already know Adam Goodes know where I'm going, but for the rest of you, wondering why I'm bringing up this man and all his accolades and putting him in the topic In the Arena, I'll now explain the definition and how his story aligns within it. Brene Brown's definition of being face down in the arena is any moment, when or place where we've risked showing up and being seen. The moment that stands out most where Adam Goodes risked everything is a game against Collingwood in 2013, when a racist slur was called out to him from a member of the audience. What's worse is it came from a 13-year-old girl. The slur that was shouted out at him deemed him as an ape. He responded by singling her out and making officials aware of what had happened. She was then escorted out of the stadium by security, and Adam was so shaken by the situation that he decided to walk off the field and take a rest in the locker room. He was feeling emotionally face down after risking being seen. This isn't the first time though that an AFL player has stood up to racism. Like in the documentary The Australian Dream, the famous photo of Nicky Wimmer, who in 1993 lifting his jersey and pointing at his skin with his middle finger in defense of the racial taunts he was receiving that day. He roared, "I am black and I am proud of it." It was of course an in the arena moment for himself. The next day after Adam's incident, he said this in a TV interview: "It was shattering. I turned around and when I saw it was a young girl, I was just like, really? I was just like, why could that happen now? I'm still shattered. Personally, it's tough." Adam Goodes, like Wimmer, leaned into discomfort, allowed himself to be vulnerable, and spoke up for himself. He also said this to the media: "It's not her fault. She's 13. She's still so innocent that I don't put any blame on her. She would have no idea how it would make anyone feel calling them an ape. The person that needs the most support right now is the little girl." The young girl later rang and apologized. He accepted her apology and later tweeted this: "Just received a phone call from a young girl apologizing for her actions. Let's all support her, please." The girl even went further by writing a letter about the phone call. "It was good to talk on the phone. I'm sorry for being racist. I didn't mean any harm, and now I will think twice before I speak." The process of regaining our emotional footing in a struggle is where our courage is tested and our values are forged. If you were to think though that that was it, and the whole situation was mutually settled between two people, then sadly you are wrong. Many people in the Australian public, as well as some media, continue to condemn him for his actions against the girl. Some news and media outlets went so far as to paint him as the villain. He should toughen up, they said, and get over it. That's the point where the boos in the stadiums from opposing fans now began with almost every game Adam played after. In many other ways though, he was praised for taking a stand. In the next year, 2014, he received one of the highest awards in this country, the previously mentioned Australian of the Year.
I believe that our choices and how we interact with each other creates our relationships, and this in turn creates the environment that we live in. Our environment shapes our communities, which then shapes the country we all live in.
He then goes on to speak about his heritage in this country and says how racism is a community issue.
And that's why racism stops with me.
Not everyone jumped on it though. And the next day on morning television, he said this about January 26.
It's Survival Day, it's all of those things to Aboriginal people. We should celebrate our
European ancestry because it's a big part of who we are. But we also, as all Australians, should celebrate our 40,000-year history of Indigenous culture and heritage.
The winter of 2015, game after game, he received boos so loud it could be heard outside the stadium. Some of those jeers may have been mindless, just enjoying something to boo. Although that dull drone could very well sound like an assertion of power. Goods faced this chorus as best he could, at one point in an Indigenous round doing an Aboriginal war dance in the direction of the jeers. Although he was showing pride in his heritage, for some reason this angered some people even more. Reasons for the boos kept being steered in different directions. He stages for penalties, some would say, or he acts like a jerk. Although there is something more sinister to the jeering that makes it difficult to believe that there is no racial undertone whatsoever. Yes, there will always be booing in sport against the opposing team, but it was the timing of this booing that seemed all too coincidental. In August of that same year, Adam Goodes took a short break from the sport, after an away game where the taunts became too much. In an interview with The Guardian, he said, "The booing was like a howl. We got thumped, and I was up all night thinking this could be my very last year of football. I was an emotional wreck." In the Australian dream, it showed the days off he had from the sport. He travelled to the Flinders Ranges in the South Australian outback. In his words, "Flinders Ranges, this very spiritual place, helped me ground myself. I became clear that this would be my very last season. I was going to exit the game." He returned to the sport to play 7 more games for the Sydney Swans before his retirement. The booing subsided somewhat from the fans of opposing teams, although it didn't disappear. Something else rather spectacular did happen though. There was an absolute outpouring of support for Adam, not just from his team's fans in the stadium, but people online. People wore his jersey number 37, held banners, and started the hashtag #IStandWithAdam. Rising strong after a fall is where we find worthiness in our lives. It's the process that teaches us the most about who we are. Time has certainly passed by now since Goodes kicked a ball professionally. In fact, it's been 5 years since he left the sport. His motivations now changed. When speaking to The Guardian, he said he spends a lot more time with family and has recently become a father. He's now doing transformative work with the Indigenous Defence and Infrastructure Consortium, which he founded, helping Indigenous businesses work in the defence sector. Also partnering with a company called NoGuard, and became the majority shareholder. In his words, "No other Indigenous business is doing this in Australia, as we import industrial and safety goods from around the world." If we can learn how to feel our way through these experiences and own our own stories of struggle, then we can write a brave new ending. When we own our stories, we avoid being trapped as characters in stories that someone else is telling, which is exactly what Adam did. To many of us, his in the arena moment will never be forgotten. A time when a man stood up and spoke out against what he knew was wrong. Of course, it isn't just this sport where a moment like this occurred. We can also look at Cathy Freeman, who was criticised for carrying the Aboriginal flag with the Australian flag after winning gold in the 200 metre sprint. Lastly, a story rather different, but yet still very much the same, is the story of 200 metre Australian sprinter Peter Norman, when he won silver in Mexico City back in 1968. He decided to be an ally with John Carlos and Tommy Smith as they put themselves into the arena. The 2 African American men who placed first and third told Peter they would be using the podium to protest the racism that was occurring in the US. Peter asked them how he could help. He wore an Olympic Project for Human Rights badge and was immediately condemned for his actions when he arrived back home. Feeling your way out of your own in the arena moment like Adam Goodes did is extremely important. It's understanding that you can make it through. Just like Peter Norman, it's also very important to support those around you who are feeling their way through their moment, lending a hand with encouragement. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you haven't done so yet, I highly recommend watching the documentary The Australian Dream. To give back to the community, for every like, comment and subscribe this video gets, I will donate twice that to the charity Pay the Rent, which goes to pushing the government to sign a treaty and commit to justice and restitution for Aboriginal people.